Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Ink Innovation Begins with Autura. Presenting today is Matthias Haidt, a solutions architect at X-Rite. I'm Robert Grotans, a Global Experience Manager, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. If you have any questions at any time during today's webinar, please feel free to submit them in the space provided. We will have some time at the end of this webinar to answer a few questions. This webinar will also be recorded and you will receive a link at the end so that you can review this webinar again at your convenience. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matthias to get things started.
Thank you very much, Robert. A warm welcome from my side as well. Yes, Matthias Haidt, Solution Architect at X-Rite, and we will look at the ink innovation, which begins with Autura. A little introduction up front so that you know what to expect. We will, in the demo, see today our colorimetry and formulation configuration, of course. That's the basis. And then to start with, we will have data and press return management. We will see how we do data import. And of course, the fundamental workflow of formulation and correction. Then we have as well the quick correction that is meant to be used next to press to give the press operator possible hint to adjust and to print in specification. Last but not least, we have generating the reports, and that will give us the guidance over this demonstration. We jump into the demo right now. So I have logged in already into Autura, and we have in Autura up left, we have this little, we call this burger menu, where we can access the different components of the Autura overall solution. Okay, so first of all, let's look into the configuration. In configuration, we have set up here individual settings for illuminant and observer in the segment of colorimetry. We have different color configurations in terms of delta re. We can set up here our default delta re value that applies to all our standards. A number of other settings are available. The demo will touch only on the surface, of course. There is much more to investigate later. Okay. For formulation, we can define whether or not we want to start, for example, with 2 or 3 colorants. We can define our default can size and our sorting criteria. We have different sorting criteria that we can define. For example, we can choose here to demonstrate if the sorting should be 40% weighted on delta re and the spectral difference would be 60%. Okay. Of course, Autura Next is available here. Autura Next is a little tool that connects the spectrophotometer to the cloud-based system. Pantone Live gives us the access to our Pantone coated and uncoated libraries. Plus, if we have a subscription, then we will have access to the dependent libraries for different print techniques and substrates. But there is more. Okay. Let's look at the data management. Okay, data management. If we have a lot of data in our database, we talk about a huge global database that is made for large companies. Okay. As well, it could be used for small companies, but the structure needs to capture large companies. So therefore, we have in data objects the access to specific standards or the assortments. This is our view into our database. From here, it allows us to immediately take action to either search for a specific standard, okay, and apply the search. And then, of course, we find this one here, and we have this action area here, the action button, where we can immediately jump to the formulation panel. Okay. The formulation panel allows us from top left to work our way to the lower right corner. And once we have selected the standard, we can select here in the formulation setup the assortment which we want to formulate with. Okay, we have a lot of settings over here, from selecting the substrate or selecting the output for print ready inks, basic inks, or basic materials. However, there is much more. We can choose individual components, or we can select from predefined groups. Okay, so if I choose here one group, that reduces the amount of components. As this is a lot of influence and flexibility down to thickness or viscosity, it might be a little bit of overwhelming to some people. So we decided, for the ones that are not experts, to introduce something that we call the formulation template. The formulation template is a kind of a container capturing all our setups here, and that can be saved in a single template. The single template is tied to an assortment, but to allow to simplify, we can even hide in the template components or settings that are not necessary for a specific application, or maybe a customer has a specific need in his formulas, so we can capture this. Of course, we press the button formula and we receive a list of formulas. These are sorted here by the predicted delta E, but we have more possibilities like score, or we can sort by price. If we select here a different recipe, we see that in the recipe display on the right side, the components are updating, as well as they do in the color plot, where we show where is our target in the center and where is our formula. Okay. Of course, we have other options as well. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see spectral graph or multiple other information, which we can set up to our liking in these individual frames, which we call widgets. These can be modified or adjusted to our liking. In the formulation process, of course, we have now, let's say, chosen recipe number, maybe recipe number 4. Okay, Then we mix that and we measure the trial. Measure the trial is down here, which brings up our software Autura Ink, which I have mentioned earlier, establishing the connection between the cloud system and the local spectrophotometer. I have set it up here for averaging, so I had to take 2 measurements. But then we see here in the color plot, next to the color plot, we see not only our standard, but as well our formula, which was expected to end up here with a delta R of 0.65. Unfortunately, due to some variations in the mixing and application process, we ended up with 2.11 delta R. So this is our first step, and we want to save the recipe and trial to capture this for later. Okay, we can give it a name here. For the recipe as such, or we could even name the trial. Okay. Down here, we see some properties which we use to structure the information, to make them searchable in our database, and that's what we use properties for, or metadata. Okay. We save the recipe and trial. And now we see here in the data tree, we see not only our standard here, the Pantone 485C, but we see as well our formula, and with the icon that contains the arrow, this is our measured trial. Based on the structure, top left to lower right corner, we have the button here to proceed for correction because our 2.11 delta R is slightly above our tolerance. This brings us over to correction. We have the correction mode, which is addition. So we want to add some more ink. And by default, the components from the initial formula are selected. Of course, we could add more to that or individual ones, but usually we want to keep the 2 that we have started with. We tell the software how much space do we have for the addition. I tell it 20%, and then we press correction. Now we get the result here for the correction. If we do not want to scroll here a little bit, then we would be able to minimize the individual panels on the left side. So let me do this so that we see here, this is our correction. It is a predicted delta R of 0.4. And on the right side, we see we still have our 2 components plus the extender. And we see the corrected percentage, and we can easily identify here in the next column the added amount. As we have chosen here basic inks and solvent, our solvent is shown separately, and we get the expected formulation result. Okay. Again, now we would mix it, measure the trial, and we decide then, based on the delta R, is this acceptable or not? If we want to save this, we can save that correction separately, even without the trial. Okay. And it gets clearly indicated with this amendment correction. Good. When we have finished our formula, we have on the right side in the widget of the recipe display, we have the little buttons here to send this to the dispenser. Okay, we can dispense, we export a file that can be picked up by the dispensing system, and then the dispenser would fill the bucket. Next to that, we see our printout. We have multiple templates here to print out for recipe or for specific for only a standard information. But as well, here we can copy to the clipboard, which means all our information here that are shown in the recipe display are copied to our clipboard and can be pasted in any application that is required. As well, we have a separate download possibility here. Usually that is chosen for the CSV, for the comma separated values, which as well gives us this information. Good. So, in fact, this is mainly the way to create a formula and to correct. Just to explain here as well, the triple dot, because it's not only that we can select from the Pantones. Of course, in the triple dot, we find the new standard, and that opens up the possibilities to measure a customer sample or to choose from Pantone Live. Choose from a file, a CXF file would be the preferred file import. Or we can even select manual or synthesize from a given formula. Let me come back to the data management because there is more. We talked about the data objects and where to choose the action here to jump over. But this opens up more possibilities. For example, the assortments and colorants. We import assortments here. And what we do have is then the possibility to manage the base assortment and to create what we call an assortment view. If we talk about larger companies, some sites might have a different view or a different access to these formulation parts. So the view allows us to specify a new name, or if required, maybe someone has a different price for a component than others. So this structure will allow us to dedicated show different people the expected data. Okay. We have dispenser setups. We can set up dispensers as well. And yeah, this is fairly simple. Different dispensers are supported. The data management gives us the possibility to select and create users, and as well define per user, as you can see here, individual access to functionalities like creating formulas, creating dispenser setups, etc. Okay. We're going to skip these two for a second here and talk about the data import. Okay. We are supporting multiple file formats, mainly the formats that are related to ink formulation or the generic CXF files. But as well, it is possible to import the ink formulation database. In this case, we load the file and it will show us how many assortments in this database have been imported, how many recipes, 180, 148 in this case, and we can prepare the individual assortment for the import. If we are importing either new or if we merge databases, we can merge the assortment as well, because then the related recipes will be linked to the existing assortment that is already in the database. On the left side, we see the components that are coming from the assortment that we are importing. And on the right side, we see what is already in the database. We are checking not only for names, but as well for the spectral similarity. And that's why we get these green dots here that you see, okay, this spectral curve here between this black and this black is really identical, and we can map that, or we can add or replace it. If we don't want to import some parts, we can ignore. Okay, so that will bring together the assortments, and in the next step we can import recipes here which are linked to this assortment. Okay, the same for standards and substrates. I mentioned print templates earlier. We have a number of print templates that can be used, and we have thickness objects. Okay, thickness objects, usually related to the flexo world, will have the possibility to transfer a different amount of ink. And when we have created a thickness object, we can align here different assortments with the calibration volume in percent related to the assortment file. Okay, we can create a number of those, depends on how many aniloxes we have on stock or the customer has on stock. Data management offers us properties. I touched there a little bit on those properties. We have different types of properties. You can see those types over here. We have numbers, or we have strings. We can have a list of string or a pure Boolean information, which is a yes or no. These information can go to a recipe currently, and we can tell it, okay, in the list of strings, of course, it could be a brand, or it could be which customer this formula belongs to. This is a way, an easy way to structure the database with metadata. Another new feature is the quick correct. So I'm selecting here for the quick correct, I'm selecting the sample that is a fail, and the press operator needs to correct this. The possibility we have created is the operator goes back to correction. He has highlighted his sample. He moves over to correction. The sample is still highlighted. And the only thing the operator needs to do is to select his assortment, which is usually well known because he knows what ink series he's using. And that opens the button for quick correct. He could choose to exclude some components which should not be in the bucket, but fundamentally quick correct will generate a theoretical formula in the background and will give us a kind of a correction. Okay, so we have here, let me open up that a little bit. Okay, you see here there is a component called batch, and that is exactly what is in the bucket. Okay, it was previously 100 gram. The operator could enter 15 kilos or liters or whatever it is, and then based on that, the software tells the operator what is the amount that should be added here, in this case 9.16 gram in total, to get closer to our target and to start printing, start producing. Yeah, that's a good way to save money during the make ready. Okay. Of course, we could again dispense or print out and mix it manually. Okay, so we have touched on our agenda. We've finished with our agenda, so I would hand it back over to you, Robert. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Matthias. Yes, I see a few questions coming in. We will take some of those questions. If you do have a question that you'd like to ask that you haven't asked yet, please feel free to submit it. So first question I see here, can we manage leftovers?
Oh yes, yes we can do that. That's in data management. Probably that got a little bit stumbled over. Let me grab one here. So we do have, and yes, that's where it is here. We have the possibility to add leftovers in the assortment. It belongs to the assortment. That's where it should be. Yes, we definitely yes.
Next question I see, can we adjust viscosity curves?
Yes, given the time, I was a little bit short on that, but while we're in this view anyways, we're correct, because we can have here a viscosity setup for the base assortment. So we have that for the individual component, of course, but as well, as I mentioned, if we use the views here, so maybe someone uses a different viscosity cup, we can have individual viscosity setup for the view as well.
We'll take a couple of more questions here.
Mhm.
Let's see. Which dispensers are supported?
Okay, dispenser setups. In fact, we're supporting literally multiple dispensers, or I should say dispenser formats. Yeah. So that means a lot of dispenser use the universal batching system. But for those who are using a different format, we have entered things like fluid, fill, and the others that we see here. Others like Ink Maker also using the universal batching system. Therefore, they are not listed explicit here, but we have quite a long list. Yeah.
And one more question. Can we customize reports?
Oh yes, as well. Something I pretty much touched on it is we see here this download button, which means we have these templates and we do have the ability to customize reports. We can do this in Microsoft Word. That's what it is supposed to be. And then we can import this new file and it will be available in the list.
All right, thank you, Matthias. This is all the time we have today, so this will wrap up our webinar. We hope everyone found this discussion useful. We will once again follow up with you with a recording to this webinar. One last thing, you will see a polling question after this webinar. If you are interested in speaking to someone to find out more information or to get a demo, please feel free to answer that polling question and we can connect you with an expert to learn more. So once again, thanks everyone for joining and have a great rest of your day.